Okay, welcome to Experience This. It's show 19. I'm Christian Watts with Magpie Travel.
And I'm Lori Timoney with Virgin Experience Gifts. Happy to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm Bruce Rosard. I'm one of the co-founders of Arrival. Looking forward to this show.
We have two esteemed, I think they're esteemed. We have two esteemed guests today. We have Frank Beltzer from Icon Park, and we have Max Starkov. Frank, can you give us a quick intro?
Yeah, so I'm in the Orlando market, worked at Universal as a senior vice president of trade sales globally for them for 7 or 8 years. And now I'm at a much smaller venue in Orlando, still a theme park category. Still trying to drive business internationally, but broader scope, but smaller operation.
Excellent. And Max?
My name is Max Starkov, travel and hospitality tech consultant and adjunct professor hospitality technology at NYU Tisch Center of Hospitality and a few other universities.
Excellent. So today we are going to get to talk about pricing and dynamic pricing, variable pricing, lots of different names for similar sort of space and maybe a bit of channel management. But I do want to start off with the latest on Airbnb. Brian Chesky did an interview, I think it was yesterday. Two things stuck out for me. Well, maybe three. One, they're doing a big focus on rooms instead of homes, which I thought was weird. And he talks about going back to his roots, and that's how they started with the sharing economy, which is not what made them successful. Second thing is he didn't sound very positive about experiences. He said they haven't done very well. He didn't say they've failed, but he said they haven't done it very well. They haven't got a plan. He says right now they will have a plan, but they don't know what they're going to do next. And then the third thing is he suggested this space, the experiences space, that could be $100 billion company, which could be Airbnb or it could be somebody else. Who wants to jump in on any one of those?
I don't think it's new, and I think it's relevant to the discussion that we're having today. You know, back in probably 2016, 2017, I met with Amazon. They were making a big push. They were going to go into the experiences space. I met with 3 brand new VPs they had brought in from all over the place. And that lasted for about 6 months. They realized that the experiences space is tough. I had similar meetings with Facebook. Facebook was going to get into the experiences space. And 6 months in, they were out. So I think what happens is people look at the opportunity that's there. They see it seems viable, but there's so much quagmire and so much antiquated technology in place. And, you know, I think, Christian, you've talked a lot about the industry lagging behind. And these powerhouses of tech jump in with all these resources and all these dollars. It can't get it done. It's a very complicated and complex and very fragmented space.
You know, Frank, that's really interesting, you know, because who is number one in our industry right now? It's Viator, and, you know, owned by TripAdvisor. So if you want to talk about Facebook, Amazon, TripAdvisor kind of comes into that space. Why have they been successful? Because Viator had already built $100 million industry business before getting acquired by TripAdvisor. So Trip was able to buy a fully baked business. You know, Rod Cuthbert built that business in the, you know, I don't know when exactly, but sometime in the 2000s, right? And it was really rolling.
And Bruce, just to add to that, they started with the small vendor, right? They started with the small attractions and small venues and worked their way up, which I think is probably the right way to do it, because those are the ones that'll handicap you. You know, it's relatively easy to go get connected to a couple of the large providers, but then when people are looking for things that you don't have, like bicycle tours or, you know, it's all those small activities that kill you because it's just so much work getting them all connected to your platform typically.
So Max, TripAdvisor, I just checked, it's worth 2.5 billion today. So that's Viator as part of TripAdvisor. So let's imagine Viator's worth 1.5 or 2 billion. Max, is there a $100 billion company in this space?
Well, I mean, some people say that there are 1.5 million local tours, activities and attractions worth visiting on planet Earth. How many of them are bookable online today?
About
Probably
20%.
Yeah.
about 20%, like 200,000, 250,000. That's what at least Viator claims. I believe that Viator would have been a $50 billion company today if it weren't acquired by TripAdvisor. But TripAdvisor acquired Viator, put it in a dark corner, did not invest in Viator, and basically only the new CEO, when he came, what, last year sometime, only he put Viator on a new path again. So in this sense, I believe that TripAdvisor did a disservice to Viator. There's no doubt in my mind, because I mean I have followed TripAdvisor, used TripAdvisor for everything in my businesses, and I'm pretty much familiar with the internal, I would say, dynamics and politics. Viator deserved better, let's put it this way. So in this sense, I think that there's $100 billion, maybe not one company, but the likes of Get Your Guide, the likes of Klook, the likes of Viator, as a, you know, amalgamation of all three, or maybe somebody else, there will be a $100 billion industry, simply because the main thing is the following. Local tours and activities have always been the bastard child of travel.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, people care about, first of all, I book my hotel, sorry, my airline, then I book my hotel, and local tourist activities, when I get there, maybe I'll figure it out. The whole point is that we are witnessing, the pandemic aside, we are witnessing a resurgence of the middle class on planet Earth. I mean, there are 2.5 billion people who were elevated from poverty to middle class status over the last 25 years. Basically, since the fall of communism in Eastern Europe, another 2 billion people will join the middle class over the next 20 years. Middle class means disposable income. Middle class means that when you cover your physiological needs, the next thing that you think is travel. So over tourism, the way that we have experienced it in 2019, let's say 2018, we've seen nothing yet. There will be over tourism all over the planet, and especially, you know, those destinations that are, you know, that have always been hot destinations. I mean, I'm sure that you have been to the Vatican museums. I mean, it's a manifestation. It's not even a visit.
So, Laurie,
so what I mean is that there will be the need to book all of these experiences and local tours and attractions in advance. How do you do that? You do it online. So that's my point, is that there will be an explosion of pre-departure bookings of local experiences and activities. Same as when you book your hotel, when you book your airline, that's when you will be booking your local experience, because you know that there will be hordes of people that will be competing with you to buy those tickets on the spot.
Yeah. And it's really already happening. I mean, you know, the pandemic rushed it along a bit, but the whole idea of booking your attraction or experience ahead of time is 100%. It's here right now. Most of the big attractions in New York City, you cannot get into unless you have a time ticket. They might have some walk-ups available. Orlando, probably it's very similar in some regard. So I don't think it's necessarily in the future. I think it's absolutely happening now. I think Viator has positioned themselves so they can accommodate both the bigger attractions and businesses with a time ticket and online booking, as well as those companies, those SMEs that, you know, those 70 or 80% that don't have online booking. Viator can accommodate those guys as well. So they really are able to work with everyone, from the guys selling, you know, surfboard lessons on the beach to, you know, Disney and Universal. So I think it's out there. The thing about Airbnb is that they were looking for that niche experience. They wanted that curated niche experience that was not online, is not online. And so very difficult for them to scale when everything they're doing is manual and they don't even have probably the tech to accommodate those small host and, you know, niche experiences. So, but I do think that 100% experiences are here, and they're all in terms of online, that is very much like a part of the landscape now, from what I can tell.
So Bruce, we're going to do a show on the investment situation right now. Max just agreed with Brian Chesky. There's $100 billion company in this space. He's going to divide it between three. Brian Chesky thinks one. How do you get from Viator's 1.5 billion to 100 billion? Where's the growth?
Unleash
Well,
it.
if it's not aggregation, like was mentioned, you know, Get Your Guide and Klook and 2 or 3 others that come in a roll up. I don't know. I mean, that seems like a stretch. I'd like to hear from Frank on that one.
I think it really comes down to, you know, this is a common problem I run into in the space, right? Is if you look at what do you call experiences? If we add in things like Open Table and Toast for restaurants, if we add in Ticketmaster for theater and for shows, and all of a sudden, yeah, you're at this massive number. But here's the problem. A, that market's extremely fragmented. Those people don't talk to each other. They all want to own their own space. And secondly, who's talking to the consumer? Consumers may not want to have a $50 billion or $100 billion entity managing all of this. Consumers might, has it ever occurred to us that consumers might actually like the fragmentation? They might not mind ordering experiences from one person, and then later on, they might trust someone else for their restaurant experience or for their, and by the way, all of these guys have issues. All of them have issues with the Taylor Swift disaster at Ticketmaster. You would have thought by now they would never have something like that happen, but they still had it happen. So there is no panacea. There is no perfect solution. And I think it's really important as you have these, you know, let's face it, Airbnb is backing out of this business. Why? One of the reasons is they probably didn't read their customer correctly. They didn't read, if they had read their customer correctly, they would have teed up the type of experiences that their customers wanted, and it probably would have been a success. Instead, they're in this space where a lot of people get this sort of abstract pie in the sky space, imagining what their customers want, and then trying to deliver something, and it fails. We've got decades of research on consumer behavior, and I'm just shocked at how often, especially with tech companies, we look at web traffic and we think we know the customer because we know the web traffic, we know the clicks, we know the rate. You know, we don't. We still have to go back to basic consumer behavior, and they dropped the ball on this one.
And I think if Brian
else.
Chesky's looking for advice, he's like, oh, we failed, and he's looking for advice, I think we could easily form a committee from the experiences industry and fly out to San Francisco and give him some advice about what Airbnb could do. I think we should move on. If you want to say one more thing.
Just if I can add one last thing is because the consumer behavior and perceptions are involved here. Airbnb has never been considered as a local tours and activities booking channel by the traveling public, period.
I disagree.
The same as Open Table is not considered as a local tours and activities booking channel. The same as Booking.com is not considered as a airline booking channel yet. They're working in this. So what I mean is that people, and I agree with Frank, in their minds, they have, I use Open Table to book whatever restaurant. I use Expedia to book air, hotel, and so forth. I use Viator to book local activities. So basically, in their minds, they have already determined to a great extent the different booking channels for different activities and so forth. So what I mean is that, and that's fine. That's fine. You know,
Airbnb
don't want one single.
As long as they know about it, Max, that's the thing. I would have to say that, you know, the person that's booking travel, most people, they don't have a clue. They really don't. You know, I mean, being in the travel business, I get people asking me all the time, well, what do I do? Like, how do I book this? And how do I book that? Okay, if you want to book a hotel, that might be a little bit easier. But when it comes to experiences, they don't have a clue how to book an experience. They don't know Viator from a hole in the wall.
Hey, it's Marika from the Von Mack Agency, here with your Tourism Marketing Half Minute. Did you know that on average, companies lose around 9% of their annual revenue due to contract-related issues? That's a significant amount of money that can be used to improve your bottom line. Vendor negotiations come up a lot in tourism marketing, so make sure you have a formal negotiation process in place. My favorite tips to include are doing your own research, setting clear guidelines, and not being afraid to ask the other party for a deal breaker. Remember, everything can be customized.
I want to move this discussion forward to what we wanted to talk about here. I think it was Max that mentioned the Taylor Swift issue with Ticketmaster. We also had the Bruce Springsteen issue.
Either he or Fred.
With Ticketmaster, and I love Bruce. And dynamic pricing. They decided, I don't know if it was Springsteen's team or Ticketmaster that said, let's use dynamic pricing for Springsteen tickets for his last tour. And all of a sudden, those ticket prices went up, right? And it was a disaster for the fans. There were some cities where you could get a cheap ticket, but some cities where it was thousands of dollars to go see the boss. So let's go into dynamic pricing. Christian, you want to lead us into that conversation?
Yeah, because I think that it is the solution for a lot of this. It's the solution for a lot of the supplier versus OTA discussion. Dynamic pricing solves a lot of that. It solves the whole friction between those two and the distribution channels. There's so much gravy there, right? And for a lot of companies that have a set amount of inventory, to fill that every last seat is worth a lot more than their profit margin in general. So I think there's a massive potential, and it's just rarely used in this industry. It's very common, as we all know, in air. It's really badly done in air, but I guess it kind of works. Hotels, everyone does it. It's kind of quirky, and they still have humans touching it. I got no idea why humans touch dynamic pricing in hotels, but it's not really happening yet in experiences. So what's the problem? Should we be pushing into this space? I think it's a massive potential, and I think there's extra money there for all involved.
And I would love to hear from you first, Frank, on this as an experience producer for years, and probably someone who's used a lot of dynamic pricing, and then we can hear from Max from how it's done on the hotel side.
Yeah, I didn't think I was going to agree with Christian as much as I do right now, so that's good. We're off to a good start.
I can change my opinion.
I thought we were on different sides of the lake on this one, but I think the answer to the question is it depends. I think there are, if you're an experienced provider who has limited inventory and you're sincerely trying to, fill every slot, and you're reaching capacity issues, et cetera, your brand is distinct and you've worked that out, and the people who experience your attraction or you have much better satisfaction when they come and it's less crowded. If all those criteria are met, then I think, hey, it makes sense. Invest in a system that can do something for you with dynamic pricing. But I always think, whenever I get into this topic, I always think about Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, right? His character there, Dr. Malcolm, where he said, he's yelling at the professor, the doctor, and he says, you spend so much time working out if you could do this, you didn't spend enough time asking if you should do this. And I think that is the question with dynamic pricing. Not can you do it? Anybody can do it, but with the right investment, but if you don't have if you're not dealing with other issues, why make the process more complicated for the customer, for your consumer? Consumers never asked for this. We've all, I used to get really frustrated a lot of times at Universal when we were implementing variable pricing, because people would still pay the price. But if you have a family of 4 who leaves and they feel like they got gouged, if they feel like they spent way more than their neighbor or their friends, I've lost. You don't want people leaving with that feeling. And we have to think more about the consumer. Consumers never asked for this. They didn't want this. So when it's done, I just think you have to make sure you're mindful and not overcomplicating the process for them. We have to have the consumer in the equation when we're thinking about it.
But Frank, is there any evidence that consumers fight this? I get what you're saying. We used to discuss this all the time on Hop On, Hop Off. What if everyone sits on the bus and talks to everyone about how much they pay? But that doesn't happen on a plane. No one talks about. It's just accepted.
Yeah, well, I think the plane analogy is a bad one, because I think they've done this for a long time. And I will tell you that the one thing that the airlines have done right is they really do offer pricing that goes up and down. I think what a lot of attractions do is they offer pricing that only goes up.
Yeah.
And I think, you know,
Yeah,
if
but
I
that's
could go to
not
Disney,
dynamic
if I
pricing.
could go to Disney for $59 for a day during slow season, and then during busy season it was $350, okay, I can swallow that as a customer, because the evidence is there that if I'm willing to adjust my schedule, I can still benefit from lower capacity time. So it's not true dynamic pricing that's being offered. It's really harvesting.
This is
what most
variable,
people
variable.
try and
It's
do.
the key. The key is transparency, Frank. That you just hit the nail on the head. You have to show your customer what your calendar is, and they have to be able to choose when they want to go. To go in the middle of the week when the price is this? Do they want to go on a Saturday when the price is this? And, you know, in terms of looking at customer satisfaction, it depends upon who you ask. I mean, we had a dynamic pricing session at Arrival last October. Wenda Hussman from the Pursuit Collection, she was on the panel. She's head of revenue optimization. And, you know, she talks about how her customers, they don't seem to have a problem with it. They pay what they choose when they want to go, and they pay what they think they can afford. But the idea is that it is fully transparent, and people have the opportunity to choose. And I think that's the key with it. I think
I want to jump in real quick here, because I know Max wants to talk. We kind of jump right into this topic, and I think we need to take a step back and define dynamic pricing and variable pricing, because in our industry of experiences, variable pricing is what people really think about, not dynamic pricing. So I would like to hear a definition of both, and that might help us as we start to speak about both of these things, because I don't even think people do enough variable pricing, let alone.
We're here for an hour trying to work out the definition. I mean, nobody knows, right? What is the definition of any of those?
Really?
I mean, there is a
Max
definition.
Max knows. Come on, Max.
Actually,
There's a definition.
I have a definition for variable pricing. Is fixed pricing based on seasonality, based on time of day, you know, whether it's in the morning, whether it's in the evening, and so forth. For example, variable pricing is what many restaurants have when they have a lunch menu where it could be the same item and it costs less than in the evening. That's variable pricing. While dynamic pricing is based on real-time supply and demand, period. Because, for example, in the evening, if it's Saturday evening at a restaurant versus Tuesday evening at a restaurant, completely different ball games. Of course, the demand on Saturday night is much higher than on Tuesday, so why have the same pricing? And that's what happens actually at restaurants. So variable pricing is known in many industries, but the true, I would say, dynamic pricing, this is the airlines and hotels. We're talking about smart hotels that are equipped with you know, one of the leading revenue management systems like Ideas, like Duetto, and so forth. So that's where real-time supply and demand is taken into the equation. Basically, a full-service hotel using one of those systems automatically makes more than 5 million pricing decisions a year.
Supply and demand in
one
real
hotel.
time.
Real-time supply and demand.
A small tour that sets it, you know, they can hold 16 people, and as soon as they get to 12, they raise their price. Like their system raises the price. That's dynamic, right?
Yeah, of course.
That's different than we're going to charge more on weekend than weekday.
Of course.
True dynamic in the experience in space, Bruce, is somebody like a Diginex, right? It's an algorithm, and you set it up based on rules that you want to consider, but rules like, you know, what's the weather like today? What's the competition? What's the consumer behavior? What's the strength of the value proposition? There's all these different rules that come into play. They're all entered into the system, and it's an algorithm, and it's delivered to the experience. Hey, we think you should be at 22.39 today. Do you accept it? Do you deny it? It's a full-blown platform that you utilize. That's true dynamic pricing.
Yeah,
for
but
the
it's
experience
rules-based, it's
space.
not AI-based. That's where the difference is. Because rule-based, yes, it's dynamic pricing, but it's that's what the airlines did and the hotels did maybe 10 years ago. Nobody uses rules-based anymore because rules-based are determined by people who have no idea what the real-time supply and demand will be 2 months from now or next week.
So you're
what they mean
saying
is that
Max,
we're talking
dynamic
about
pricing
real-time AI-powered
That
is non-existent
is.
in your industry. Let's put it this way, simply because
Not
there are
true.
no.
That's not true. That's not true. There are attractions and experiences right now that are capacity based. And when their capacity gets to, let's say, 80%, right away, their ticket price goes up and it goes
That's
up
rules-based,
across
yes.
all their channels.
Yeah, this is
Well,
rules-based.
but it's using an algorithm based on their capacity.
It's arbitrary whether the human sets the rule or the AI sets the rule or the humans preset the
No,
rule.
but it's not
all arbitrary.
we're talking about the ability to examine multiple data feeds, real-time data feeds. For example, which of the local attractions and tours and activities operators are monitoring how hotels are raising or lowering their rates, or the airlines in real time?
It's not relevant. It's not relevant, Max.
It's absolutely relevant.
Absolutely not.
It's absolutely relevant because if the hotels are raising their prices, it means that there's a demand which they know that it's coming. The same is with the airlines. So why don't you take this into
because the experience space has many different types of customers, and they're not just people staying at hotels. You have, when I was
Airbnb is the same thing.
When the bankers come in with 40,000 for a convention, they don't take tours. The dentists do. So you can't look at hotel prices because there's often tens of thousands of people.
It's only one of the data feeds. That's what I mean. So it's you have demand for the whole destination. By the way, Google Demand is a business intelligence tool that many hoteliers and airlines are buying. TripAdvisor has a similar, which is like destination wide. You have companies that specialize in predicting travel demand. Again, business intelligence and so forth that you can incorporate into your revenue management system, or pricing, dynamic pricing system, whatever you want to call it. Then it's pathing behavior on your own website. How does it? What do people are looking for? What dates are they looking for? Not booking, looking for. All of this. So we're talking about a typical revenue management system, for example, in hospitality, uses 20, 30, 40, 50 real-time data feeds from the weather you mentioned, the airline lift, what your competitors are doing, of course. I mean, that's the easiest part. What the destination is experienced as a whole, and so forth. So in this sense, the sentiment index, of course, is very important. Whether it's trending up or down for your service, for your property.
But here's the X factor, Max. Is I agree with all of that. That's all the demand side. The X factor is a supply. When you've got a hotel, you've got 200 rooms, and that's it. Usually, in the experiences side, you've got buses or tour guides, and that's very variable, right? When you get busy in the middle of August, you go and grab an extra bus. You go and grab an extra 4 tour guides. You go and grab an extra an extra few boats. Yeah. That's what makes it more.
I agree. So okay. So
Frank, do you want to jump
part
in?
of the equation?
Yeah.
But
so
anyway, what I mean is that I believe that dynamic pricing, whether people like it or not, will be entering the tours and activities segment big time. There's no doubt. And I'll tell you, software providers, which have already, for example, in the short-term rental, you have revenue management systems that are really doing a good job already. In the airline industry, of course, in the hospitality industry, of course, and I believe that many of them will be entering the tours and activities space simply because there's a great opportunity there.
So I think the rules, I mean, to me, the rules of this whole discussion are a lot simpler. You know, Bruce earlier talked about the Springsteen tickets, And so in that sense, dynamic pricing's existed for a long time. Scalpers, they would use dynamic pricing. Like
Yes,
the day
of
of the concert, if the show was sold out, they would charge more for a ticket. But if you waited till he had already played 3 or 4 songs, boy, a ticket price jumps down. That is fundamentally the whole thing, the whole idea. We used to call it scalping.
I agree.
That's really measured on one metric, right? One metric, the timing of when you get your ticket, not even of when the show is. That one's just measured on one metric. So I think it doesn't have to be that complicated for companies to make the right decisions. My only concern, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think, to Christian's point, it's a good thing. But let's not forget that, when you asked me about examples, just a couple of weeks ago, Iger came out and he admitted that Disney had got a little aggressive with their modeling and their prices had got too. Now, I'm just telling you, as someone who's worked in the theme park space, for him to make a public statement that they are charged, the feedback that they must have been getting through customer surveys, and it has to be so overwhelming for him to say that publicly. It can't just be a few people or a few. This has to be top 2 box across the board for a long period of time for them to recognize that they got too aggressive. So I think, to your point, Christian, there are examples of customers getting irritated, just like Bruce would be irritated if he got scalped a ticket for $2,000 to see Springsteen. I think that is the concern, is you've got to know where the line is, and you've got to continue to think about your customers. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, of course.
It's a bad model, but that has to be job one. And we're starting to see companies getting burned as I think they get too aggressive with these models and letting things just sort of run.
I think it's about doing your homework. And one of the things that I learned when I was, kind of working on this session was that some of these companies that are engaging with either dynamic pricing or pricing, they are spending a lot of time looking at business as a whole, right? Some of them almost a year of collecting data and understanding, okay, number one, is my business in good shape? Like, what's my product like? Is it a good product to begin with? I mean, so looking at all website, conversion, all that kind of stuff. So really spending some time understanding the competitive, set, who's visiting where in Chicago or whatever. Does that mean I can raise my rate? So doing your homework, like you said, Frank, it's a big thing. It's not like you just jump into this. But just a quick comment on variable and really the whole experiences space. I mean, we're talking about dynamic pricing. Definitely happening in this world, and it's going to happen even more. I agree with you, Max. However, right now, 65% of the businesses in the experience space don't even engage in variable. They're 100% static. So there's opportunity for them that they have not even tapped into at all. And that could be raising their rates on the weekend. It could be as simple as, okay, I have a boat, company, I'm going to charge more for sunset. I mean, just simple things they're not even doing.
If you book 3 months in advance or 6 months in advance, you get a 20% off. So that they have more business on the books, as the date of the.
So for our industry, should we really be talking about dynamic pricing, or should we walk before we run and start to really help the industry learn about variable pricing?
We kind of have to do both, Bruce, because you got people on one end that are already engaged in variable and they're moving towards dynamic. All the observation decks want dynamic for sure. The major theme parks, bus companies that are very capacity restricted unless they can go out and get another bus, like Christian said. But I think you have to talk about both. They're both in our world right now.
Yeah, I think, I know we're trying to get the definition. I think dynamic's just a very tuned in version of variable, whether a human touches it or the AI or the algorithm. I don't think it matters that much, but from what Frank said, it is being done today for an owner operator or for the guys that sell tickets at Times Square. That's what they do all day long, is dynamic pricing in their head. An owner operator with a bus company.
No AI involved, right?
No AI. Hop on, hop offs in New York, the seller on the street get to set his own price.
Yeah. Well, if it's a snowy Tuesday in February, there's some discounts. If it's July 4th weekend, it's not quite the same. But every owner operator is making those decisions. Somebody walks up to the bus 5 minutes before it leaves for a wine country coach, they're getting a deal. So this already happens, but I think what we're questioning is we all do it as an owner operator. We just need to automate it. We need to do this at scale, which systems can do now. The ResTechs should be doing this. Another failure of ResTechs. They failed at Google Things to Do, and they failed at delivering good variable or dynamic pricing. I think they need to be working.
Christian, you're going to get in big trouble over that comment. I think
whatever, they can come on the show and defend themselves.
It's true. He should not get in trouble for that comment.
To debate with Christian. Okay.
Not by me, Frank. He's not going to get in trouble by me.
By the way,
it's the truth. It's the truth.
Christian, by the way, judging from what's happening in the airline industry and in hospitality, central reservation systems, you call them the
ResTechs,
ResTechs. So we call them CRS, central reservation systems vendors. Some of them do some kind of dynamic pricing, but not to the fullest extent, more like variable pricing, simply because it involves a completely different type of software. So they're specialized revenue management system companies that's all they do. They don't do anything else, because it's data mining. It's first of all the historical data, all of the booking pace, all of the real-time data feeds that have to be taken into consideration. So in this sense, it's a specialized software, I would say, that is not even remotely close to the distribution, to the reservation technology. So in this sense, I think that they will emerge, and I hope that they will emerge, revenue management systems for the
I mean, there are a couple. I don't think the space is big enough. So I don't think the space is big enough for that third party, because I don't think there are enough operators that have fixed supply. Every hotel pretty much has fixed supply, right? But most people in Experiences don't have fixed supply, and you could change it within half an hour if you need to, often. So I think that's such a massive X factor that it has to be attached to the ResTech, because it's the ResTech that understands that.
But it's not as easy, because first of all, you have, especially now with labor shortages and the likes, finding an additional tool, like guide, for example, or even a bus with a driver, is not getting easier. I think it's getting more difficult than in the past.
So just to piggyback on what Christian was saying, I think, and I'll make a prediction here, Bruce, and you can hold me to it if this doesn't happen.
I'm writing it down.
The solution for true dynamic pricing, and actually for all of these options, the solution that will be mass adoption of this is going to come from outside the industry. We're not going to, the Accessos of the world, the Sabres of the world, the Galaxies, it's not coming from them. It's not. They're too vested in the way of doing it, where they just cream a transaction fee off the top and don't have to develop new product. And it's not going to come from them. It's going to come from someone outside the industry is going to look at this and say, God, this is so simple. I can just build an app on the phone. It connects
like
a third party.
No.
Some kid in his garage, Christian. The next Steve Jobs is going to be sitting there saying, this is so freaking easy. I can do it this way. And it will put third parties together with suppliers. And it will work just as well for large theme parks as it does for people renting bikes. And somebody's going to come up with that product, and it's going to take over the market. It's not going to come from inside, because everybody's too bound to their old paradigms and their own way of doing business. There is going to be a major disruption, and it's going to come from outside. That's my prediction.
Could it be like Ideas, that's where it's coming from. Doing it well for hotels? Is that outside?
I believe that hotel companies will do this. And by the way, I think that there's another danger here. I'm not sure whether you noticed this announcement by Vrbo in the short-term rental. It was done like the beginning of the week, actually, where now they offer short-term rentals a revenue management system. So based on what's happening on Vrbo, the demand on Vrbo and this and that, dynamically, Vrbo offers the vacation rentals that we can change your rates based on supply and demand on Vrbo. So basically, Vrbo is taking over your pricing decisions. That's what they're offering.
Yeah, I mean, Airbnb already does that, right?
So I'm afraid that no, actually, in hospitality, they don't even dare offer it.
No, Airbnb has that feature. You can turn the pricing.
Yeah, Airbnb has it. I know. My whole point is that I'm afraid that Get Your Guide or Viator may be the first ones to offer such dynamic pricing, and this is a danger to the industry because then you are outsourcing your pricing decisions to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Which is,
I mean, Viator does a little bit, but Laurie, I got a question for you though. You may in the past have worked for a PaaS company, and allegedly those PaaS companies ask for crazy commission, like maybe 60 or 70% sometimes. That's a version of dynamic pricing, or that's what the PaaS companies would claim, kind of, right? Did you look at it like that? It's yield in terms of the operator. It's yield management, right? I'm giving you a great price because you'll guarantee a lot of income if you're a PaaS company, which you're not now.
Yeah, of course, it's based on the volume for sure. It's also based on the fact that the net rate is hidden, so it's not like you're selling it at X amount and making X amount. It's it's part of the overall package essentially, which a PaaS really is a package. There's a lot of reasons why people might decide to do that, but probably as a supplier, the reason would be that you're obviously getting volume, and it's a product that people buy. They go to a city. You want your attraction to be in that. You want it to be one of the opportunities they choose when they decide to go to Orlando or whatever.
It's a convenience. Yeah.
Frank, how do you see passes, Frank?
So I think we've seen this kind of being done in hotels for a while. People like Hotel Beds will come to you and they'll say, give us X% of inventory. We'll guarantee we'll pay for the rooms. And then they go off and they price it at whatever rate they can. You typically give them a much lower rate, but you're guaranteed a certain amount of revenue. And then they go out and market those rooms at those prices. Ticketing and attraction people, we've been a lot more nervous about that. But I will tell you that, we've had some instances in my experience where we've done that with distressed inventory when we really see things are slow, to go to various providers. And I think you will see more of it. Those who don't have the technology maybe to execute, they can go to somebody like this and say, hey, we'll sell you, 25,000 tickets at X rate. And then they can go mark them up as they want and do it. So I think those kind of things have already been happening, which I don't know if it's that much different than having a third party step in and do your dynamic pricing for you, but it is one option. I don't think people would just totally, you think about what you do on eBay. If you want to sell something, you tell them what your terms are, what you're willing to accept, buy it now, what you would like to get, and then eBay kind of does it. I could see us getting to a place with tickets where a system like that is in play, and you just set the parameters and then let it sell based on that.
Well, similar
It's a
cruise,
perfect
right?
market. It's
Cruise will come in and buy a block at a highly discounted rate, but they're pre-paying and guaranteeing the experience creators, right? So it's a similar, but that's like a distribution cost more than dynamic pricing for the customer.
Yeah, and honestly, it gets really complicated once you start considering the trade and all of this too, because especially with attractions and experiences, it's interesting with hotels. Yeah, you probably have to have a contract with your trade partners that says, you're not going to sell above this or whatever. It gets complicated with attractions, because if you're a trade partner, you don't want to be out there spending your marketing money to try to push something that somebody can find online a lot less expensive if they go direct to that attraction. And, that's a big problem with the dynamic pricing scenario. As an attraction that goes into dynamic pricing has to have a solution for the trade right now, partly because the res techs can't handle it. They just can't handle it. So,
and the OTAs can't handle it.
And the OTAs can't handle it. I mean, there might be one res tech I know of that is dabbling in dynamic pricing. I think I only know of one.
Yeah, but that's why it shouldn't reside with the res tech the whole revenue management and dynamic pricing. It should be a separate entity, like it's in hospitality, like it's in the airline industry.
Well,
And
it
then
if you consider,
because with hotels, the revenue management system sifts through 2 years worth of data, historical data, all of the new real-time data feeds that are coming, crunches the numbers, and comes with recommendations for, let's say, 50 room types and suite types for the next 365 days. And these are changed on an hourly basis. But all of this is pushed back to the property management system. And from there, it goes to the channel manager, to the central reservation system. And that's why hotel can maintain rate parity. Basically, all of the distribution partners get exactly the same rate, which is dynamic and changes every hour or every.
So that works in hotel. But question for Frank: can dynamic pricing work in experiences today if this can't get pushed up to the distribution networks? Especially the OTAs.
No, you got to be able to execute. And we've got a lot of people out there who, to Lori, really hit the nail on the head. I think we've got, how many commercials are out there from OTAs that are advertising, almost all owned by the same company, actually, in many cases, advertising against each other, that somebody paid $30 less for the exact same room. And here they are, they're the biggest proponents of dynamic pricing, and yet they're advertising against each other that, I paid more and this person paid less. Then what a horrible thing that is. And yet they're all doing it. So I think that's, training the consumer to think that, all prices are equal. Like, why did I have to pay more? So I think until we can execute it properly and easily for the customer, that's one of my big points is it may not be the time for you to do it until you can execute it properly.
Yeah,
I want to go around the room to finish with I got two questions. Let's do short answers. So first question is, what needs to happen today, either from OTAs or ResTechs or operators? Who needs to take action on this? And then the second one is, where are we going to be in 5 years? Where are we actually going to sit? And I'll say one thing I've said to a couple of ResTech CEOs is that as an operator, I'll jump into this dynamic pricing thing with 2 feet if you guarantee I'll make more money. So I'm nervous because I think you're going to discount my tickets, because a lot of operators think dynamic means discount. But if you guarantee me that my average price will be at least more than it is today, I'll give you half of the gravy. I'll give you half of the money. And I think there's a ton of money in there for ResTechs. Maybe half's a lot, but you could take a lot more money off the table if you're the one managing this for me. So that's what I think needs to happen today. So 2 questions. What needs to happen today, and where are we going to be in 5 years? Let's start with Max. This is a short, quick fire game.
Yeah, I think that first of all, variable pricing is a must-have today. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, today. There's no doubt. You cannot undersell your product when there's a high demand, and then maybe you're overcharging in slow demand, and you're not maximizing your revenue. So variable pricing is a second. Advanced purchase pricing should be on the list as well, so that you can have more business on the books for future dates that are far removed from today. As far as dynamic pricing, you should not outsource dynamic pricing to the OTAs. Let's because in this sense, you will be losing more than you will be gaining. And I would say that the case studies from the other sectors of travel sectors all point to one thing: is the actual operator has all the data, past data, all of the data, when people want their product, how much people are booking their product, what's wrong with their product, what's good with their product, and so forth, much better than a distributor like, let's say, Viator or Get Your Guide. So you have all the data in your hands, and you have to be the one instituting dynamic pricing using the right software, which I believe is still not available in your sector, but it will come.
Very good. Frank?
Well, I think we're going to continue to see more people use variable and date-based, and I think that's relatively easy to execute. And I think that's probably what people should focus on trying to execute in this space. I look at my experience at Universal, where we spent years and millions of dollars trying to get there. And, I just know that these small operators don't have the budget to just make this work. And even when we were done, we couldn't do trade tickets, to Lori's point. So I think you're going to see people focused on better systems to do date-based and sort of seasonal-based or variable ticketing. That's an easy win for profit, and it's pretty easy to know when your visitation is coming and to plan ahead, and that's what you'll see. For me, in the future, I see this being a problem that someone on the outside is going to, I think there is an opportunity there, but I think it's going to be an outlier. I think it's going to be someone we don't expect. It's going to recognize that their technology has further applications in travel, probably someone that's already doing really good with dynamic principles and formulas and connectivity to all the different players. And they'll see the opportunity, and they'll take advantage of it.
It's going to be a robot, is what you're saying. I think it's going to be a ChatGPT robot. Bruce,
you love those robots, Christian.
Of course I do. Of course, Bruce.
I think the short term, I'm going to agree, is variable pricing. Anyone that's not doing variable pricing today is leaving money on the table, period, end of story. Two really simple examples. Think about the kayak companies and the whitewater rafting companies, where you can see a card at the hotel, the old school card, here's the price, save $5 with this card. That alone kills variable pricing, because that does not allow them to discount digitally, right? So variable pricing should happen today. The other really quick example is even ski resorts that sell day lift tickets, which there's not that many that do anymore, but the ones that do, most of them don't charge differently for midweek and weekend. That is freaking insane, right? Weekend, you can't ski because of lift lines. Midweek is wide open. That's when I ski, and I never see anyone on the mountain. So that's variable pricing. 5 years from now, there has to be a res tech in our industry that integrates dynamic pricing. And look, all the res techs in our industry, the SaaS players for the SMEs, they're not all that different. And then the bigger guys on the ticketing side, they're not all that different. They have certain bells and whistles. Someone's got to crush it with dynamic pricing built into the res tech, because if you have dynamic in the res tech, that will speak up to the OTAs. And like Max said, don't let the OTA set your pricing. Yeah. But of course, if you can set it at your res tech level, that is your pricing that the res tech can then deliver to all of your distribution partners.
Yeah. So solution to your printed rack card thing, Bruce, is you put from. And then you can charge whatever you want.
Yeah, but you want to go up and down, right? You want to go up and down.
Well, you can go down anytime you want. No customer's going to complain if you go less, but if you go up, you have to put from. Then they. Yeah. Laura, you're going to get the final word on this topic.
Yeah. So as everyone else has already said, if you're an operator and you're listening to this and you don't do variable, you're leaving money on the table. You need to 100% look at doing that. If you're doing a lot of discounting, you probably have plenty of room for variable pricing. So for sure that. Secondly, I think that in terms of dynamic pricing really coming to life in this space, it depends on the OTAs. The res tech will fall in line if the OTAs can accommodate dynamic pricing. They're not in a rush to do it because the OTAs can't accommodate it. But as soon as Get Your Guide and Viator can accommodate dynamic pricing and the rest of the big ones start to fall in line, I think that the res tech are going to come to life on this thing. However, I think, the OTAs are busy looking at ChatGPT right now. So who the heck knows when they're going to have time. And I think in 5 years' time, I hate to say it, but this space is very murky, as we all know. So the amount of operators doing variable pricing maybe goes to 40% instead of 60%. And the numbers of doing dynamic that are maybe doing 10% now goes to like 25 or 30. Yeah. But I think this business moves super slow, this experience in space. And so 5 years is not enough time to really I don't think there's going to be a massive change in this in 5 years.
It used to move slowly, Laurie, before we had AI. Now everything's 100
Oh,
times the
right.
speed.
Okay.
So
all
what's
right.
your
And-
answer, Christian?
And some OTAs would claim they already do the dynamic pricing. All the OTA needs to do is consume a price, right?
Yeah.
The dynamic piece can happen in the res tech. They just need to be able to accept a spot price, which
Right.
some can, some can't, some have problems with, etc. But
Doesn't sound like
No, but
rocket
it's because all of them use cash, even with the real-time APIs to the reservation providers.
yeah, they all cash.
They
the
use
price,
cash.
yeah.
So if you use smart cash that is refreshed not every 2 hours but every half hour, that's how they can accept dynamic pricing. There's no problem.
Yeah. Well, on that note, thank you everyone for joining today. Great discussion. I know I could talk about this for another hour, but we can't do that. So
We
thanks
know you
everyone for
could
joining.
too.
We'll follow up on LinkedIn.
We have to get back to our
To be
day
continued
jobs.
for sure in October at Orlando, at Arrive Orlando, and hopefully both you guys will join us there. Yeah.
Okay, guys.
That's good.
All right.
My
Okay.
pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Take
everyone.
care.